My name is John Zoller, and I'm a member of the Porsche Club. I have a Blue Shark Boxster parked outside, new one, and these are also my car mascots. And I have a large car mascot collection. I have about 500, and they're on display at different museums. And this exhibition was done in collaboration with Revs, and Revs has spent an enormous amount of time and energy in putting it together, creating these graphics, deciding what should be in which case, and in fact even selecting the mascots that are here. And we're very fortunate to have a museum and institution like Revs in Naples. It is really not very well known, and actually it'd be good to spread the word about just Revs, period. What is a car mascot? Well, basically it's either some kind of a symbol or a little statue that is now over a hood. They began with the radiators were exposed. The early cars, 1910, 20s, the radiators were outside of the hood, and there was a cap where you put in water. And somebody decided, well, why don't I have some kind of something, symbol, meaning on the cap. And so you wound up with the car factory saying, hey, that's a great way to advertise. And if they, for example, Pontiac, say, well, they took the theme of an Indian, and anytime a Pontiac went down the street without even knowing what the car was, you saw it was Pontiac. Same with Packard, so it was really great free advertising. And it also related to people what their interests were. So in America, 90% of all mascots were made along with the cars. They're called factory mascots. 10% in America and many, many more in Europe, especially in France. There's something called accessory mascots. And these were made by different artists, and different companies produced them. They were very expensive, but they provided an enormous choice of whatever your interests were. Now with cars, as you might expect, the general themes are speed, power, and beauty. Makes sense with cars. And they represented the art styles that were made between 1910 and say 1950s. So if you could just spend about 2 minutes just looking at the different cases, and then I'll come back to the rest of the summary. So over here, as I said, there are 5 cases here. Just spend a couple minutes looking at the cases. The general themes, as you'd expect, are speed, power, beauty, maybe certain special interests. And the specific subjects, though, again, as you might expect, probably the most popular were women, especially nude or semi-nude women. And by calling them goddesses, you could pretty much get away to have a nude woman on your car. So these were not nudes, these were goddesses. Now what you have in the case here, an example of how women were depicted in different art styles. So from about 1910 through 1950, there was an enormous change in art. You began with realism, where you have lots and lots of detail. And then it became more and more abstract. Then you went into Art Deco, you went to Cubism, and variations of this along the way. And eventually you get to that 5th area, which is called machine aesthetics, where you're basically taking wheels and strips of metal and whatever, and you've gone away from these statues. Now these mascots were made with one at a time, very expensive, and they were made with something called the lost wax technique, where basically an artist would come up with a model in clay or wax or something else. They'd make a shell, they'd pour metal in the shell, and this would be bronze. Do a lot of handwork to finish it, and then they'd be plated with either silver or nickel or chrome. So the subjects then, as I said, women here. Here you have mythology. Over there you have animals, and over the other end you have machine aesthetics. And the case that I started with was pretty much international, where you had Indians. French loved Indians. They probably had 20 different versions of an Indian mascot. You have lots of Egyptian things. 1922 was, King Tut's tomb, and all of a sudden everybody's doing something involving Egyptian goddesses and pyramids, etc. And then you also have special events, where in 1927, Charles Lindbergh was the first person that crossed the Atlantic in a plane, a solo flight. And the French went crazy because the 6 guys that tried it before him all died. So this is a huge event, in France as well as in New York. Basically these mascots, they're small statues, and they represent the art styles and how the styles changed with time. And so in a very small space, you basically can have a history of art. And what Revs did in this case, decide to concentrate on France in particular, and really Paris. But again, you could do it in, from other countries, the British, etc. So any questions?
How did you protect theft?
I'm sorry?
How do they protect theft of these statues from the
How do they protect them?
Yeah.
They probably weren't on cars very long, quite honestly. You have just like your own car, you're driving and all of a sudden a pebble hits your hood. You say, oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, can you imagine a pebble hitting these? In fact, Revs has a DuPont, which is an American car, that has a glass Eagle Lalique that has a big dent in it from a stone hitting it. In some cases, like in some of the Packards, the chauffeur would unscrew the mascot and put a simple cap on the car if it was left outside. So they had to be careful then. Now they sink. The Rolls Royce and the Bentleys, they still have, Bentley has the B and Rolls Royce still has a Spirit of Ecstasy, but you turn off the ignition and the mascot sinks under the hood, and so that's how they protect it. One thing I should point out, mascots pretty much declined in the 60s, and one reason, or a couple of reasons, but one of them was really safety, because if some of these hit you, leave a real dent in your body, especially a car, major collision. And the other thing is that the cars became more streamlined, and the mascots did, especially in America. There's a big difference in what happened in America versus here. They're all streamlined, they're all simple, they're all long, but they're heavy. So the cars are, saving every ounce, pound to get better gas mileage. So that was another reason. So basically you have safety, you have weight, and styles. So like everything else, something's in style and then times change and the styles change. Oh, one final thing, if anybody is interested, you may just want to just look at it in the bookstore. Here's a book I published which essentially has 120, 130 British and French mascots. This is 30. So you go through there and you can see what other ones are possible, which is amazing, absolutely amazing, the effort that went into this. I should mention one other thing, since we have a few minutes. These accessory mascots were so big in France that in the mid-20s there would be a contest of the best mascot that some auto group would have, where there would be a gold medal or a silver medal. So this was really important. Now, as I say, in France compared to anyone else. The other thing is that and someone asked me this, the leading stores like Hermé sold mascots. So, there are a lot of independent stores that sold art. Lalique, the glass, the crystal company sold Lalique glass mascots. So you could get them in different places. It's not like in the U.S. where they 90% came with a car. So it was a totally different culture, and really France, Paris were at that time the art culture center of the world.
But that's not cheap
Okay.
to buy one of those.
I'm sorry.
Aftermarket, you said you could buy one?
Yeah.
I bet it would be very expensive.
Well, they were very expensive. Anything from Hermé would be very expensive.
Right.
Again, you have to adjust for inflation and all this stuff, but they were very expensive.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they had those cars.
Right. Now, what you see here are really some of the really high-end mascots. There are a lot of ordinary mascots. In fact, an estimate is there were maybe like 7,000 different ones made. Now, maybe 5,000 are worth looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are very selective. Now, the reason I was able to put this collection together was because of the internet and because of digital photography. I didn't have to go around the world. I mean, there'd be no way that an American would be able to put together a collection of French or British mascots, unless you live there. But here I can live anywhere, and as I say, dealers, auction houses, whatever, advertise these on the internet. But in addition to that, there are a couple of things. One is digital photography. You could detail, and you can tell an auction house or a dealer that I want to see I want to see the base or the head or under the mascot. And without digital photography, you couldn't examine them. Since you can't examine them with your hands or in person, if you're buying it on the net, on the web rather, this is the next best thing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is you don't have to travel around the world. So you have the advantage then of knowing where they are, having detailed photos, and then be able to do searches. You can search the internet, Google, Bing, whatever, AI now, or you can have your own library. And you didn't have the opportunity to take a library with you if you were going to an automobilia show and see these things. Because like all art, the question is, how much should you pay? And it's an exponential curve. The higher the quality, the price escalates. So it's like all art. The ordinary stuff is, affordable, and the rare and the important becomes more and more unaffordable. So one of the key decisions a person who buys art has to know is how good is it in terms of the spectrum of ordinary to superior. Any other? As I said, this exhibition should be up at least 6 more months, maybe longer. So if you ever come back, or in fact even after your tours, you can come back here and have a good look.
So was Hermes one of the biggest?
I'm sorry?
Was Hermes one of the biggest, like aftermarket for manufacturing?
Hermé.
For Hermé, I mean.
Well, Hermé, Hermé was always a really high-end store, for 150 years, 200 years. And so they were like the times where the earlier mascots they sold were realistic. Like, for example, that Fame was sold by Hermé. A couple of these, that Siren was sold by Hermé. The Foreman was sold by Hermé. And then, with time, the machine aesthetics were sold by Hermé. The designer is a man named Francois Roque, who was the chief designer, one of the chief designers. And those were exclusive, and many of them, there are like 6 made. So you can imagine what, six of anything from Hermes would cost. But there are a lot of other Hermes-like companies there, stores there in Paris.